Sometimes when we begin to question our faith or have doubts about our tradition, it can feel like we are wandering out into the desert. When we take a step back and honestly evaluate organized religion in the 21st century, many times it doesn't make any sense. The more we cling to it and try to save it, the worse it becomes. In addition, widespread abuse, cover-ups, and victim shaming cause some of us to question whether it will ever be right again.
The Desert Sanctuary was created by Karl and Laura Forehand. It consists of a podcast, a blog, along with Karl and Laura's writing.
We're happy you're here. Welcome to the show. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Desert Sanctuary podcast. I'm Laura Forehand, and we are recording this on November 8th, 2022, and that means it is my co-host, Karl's birthday.
It's my birthday.
Yay! Happy birthday to you. Your phone's been blowing up over there because you have so many people that love you and want to wish you happy birthday. So
my birthday to me is so not a big deal. I usually, probably buy something for myself or, give myself permission to go do something or, eat out. I ate Mexican food today. Mm-hmm. Those are the kind of things I do just to say, okay, I can treat myself. It's my birthday. I'm happy about it, but I definitely don't make a big deal out of it. Saying that, I told you before the episode it's my birthday and we'll mention it, so maybe I do.
Well, I don't know. This one is kind of, I don't know, like you had your stroke in January, so I look at it as, you're still here, and that's a good thing.
I'm glad I had another birthday.
Right, need to celebrate that, so, yeah.
Yeah, and today I did some things for myself, like
take care of yourself.
Getting my glasses, redone, so I don't have to super glue them back together, and went to the doctor.
Yeah.
So I've been kind of having
some
some kind of sinus and lung thing for a while. So get all that cleared up and kind of took care of myself. Got a COVID shot yesterday.
Booster.
And a flu shot.
Yeah, flu shot, not the same day.
Yeah.
Because I heard that can kind of like wipe people out big time. So.
Yeah, I definitely was feeling it this afternoon, and they dilated my eyes too. So this afternoon I was kind of a mess, but I took a 30-minute nap, seemed to kind of get all the cobwebs out and reset. So I'm good to go. I'm ready to do this.
Good. All right. Well, what else? What else is going on? How's the book doing?
So
you haven't updated me today.
I have looked at it every 10 minutes, but no, I'm not that crazy anymore. But it has been about almost 3 months. Another week it'll be 3 months. It's been, up in the top, stayed at least in the top 50, but a lot of times most of the time it's been up in the top 10, especially when it got marked down to 99 cents.
Right.
And that's supposed to come off, but it still hasn't.
Well,
and we're 8 days in.
In a way, I'm kind of glad about that because I want people to be able to get it. My whole thing was we wanted to give it away for free for so long, and then when we decided to publish it, so I'm kind of glad. But anyway, so I cut you off. What were you going to say?
No, that's exactly right. That's our main desire. At some point it needs to go back up. So that we can benefit from some of this. I really don't know where all the traffic's. I do my due diligence of write an article almost every day and kind of point to the book, and I share some of that around in different groups and different places, just like most people do. But I really don't know where the traffic's coming from, and I'm just now starting to get messenger messages.
Oh yeah,
messenger messages. Of people saying, well, I'm about to finish it. I liked it.
Oh, good.
And so hopefully then, get some reviews from that. Right. And that'll help overall, and hopefully people tell.
But
what
as of right now, what is it? Number 2, did you say?
It is number 2.
Good.
When I checked right before this. So usually when I do that and announce it on a podcast, it's number 2. It goes down to 5. Right away. So I don't know.
It's okay. I mean...
Yeah, it's probably God punishing me, right?
Oh, my gosh. You need to not say that. Oh, my gosh. Yeah, because that's what we believe.
Yeah. So, but we're super happy.
Yeah.
We're super excited about it. We put the work into it. We like it. We, okayed it twice to be published. So we definitely like it and like what's in it and want to share that with the whole world. So
right.
I'm glad we're still moving along there.
Right. Same. Yeah. That is exciting. I probably don't check the numbers as much as you do, but that's kind of your side of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
and I like doing that.
Yeah.
I like promoting it.
You like it, yeah, promoting it and kind of watching the stats and all that kind of stuff.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
also we've been, we might mention to people our plan kind of with the podcast. So through the end of the year, it's almost exclusively interviewing women.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to interview one kid about his book and, a few things like that. But mostly we're interviewing women. A lot of them are coming from, trauma-based systems and cult-like
high-demand religions.
High-demand religions. There you go.
Yeah.
And it's been really good, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah. Well, for me, it's been incredibly validating because, a lot of, when I was going through it, I just felt like I am going crazy. Like I'm the only one who's experiencing this. And I mean, even though doing the Desert Sanctuary and we found other people that have been through, religious trauma or, various things within a denomination or religion, I feel like a lot of these stories from these women, their personal stories are kind of mirror mine, or I see a lot of myself in their stories. And so that's been really validating for me,
Yeah, and a lot of them there was another ministry wife,
right,
couple's wife that just messaged me today, and I told her to get in touch with you, that you'd love to talk to her. And we're going to interview her on a podcast in December.
Yeah.
So you hear that story again.
Yeah.
But it has been, and most of the people that read the book, that really get down into it and read it, just keep saying that over and over again. That's so many points that they resonated with. It was just at least a confirmation and kind of a sign, like you said, that you're not alone.
Right.
In that.
Right. Exactly. So what's on the agenda tonight?
So it's been a while since we've done one of these where we just sit down and kind of have a conversation. But I wrote something recently because for me, this is where it came from. So for me, I kind of took inventory the other day of, well, what do I do? I know I don't want to go back into a group. And every time I think about that, it doesn't seem right. And anything we've done to try to create a community, we're just not sure about that yet, right? And we don't want to form a group and start meeting somewhere,
right,
and get back into all that. And all the people we're associated with, and we're talking about deconstruction. Brad Jerzek's got a new book out about deconstruction from a different kind of angle. And so a lot of people are talking about that and how far do you deconstruct? Well, then what do you do next? If you don't go back into a church, what do you do? And what's your spirituality? What's your practices? And I think people have asked that all along. So the other day when I was doing inventory, the one thing that struck me was just how simple my spiritual life is. It's simple, but it's also deeper. And it really isn't that complicated. But I sat down and wrote some things down that I thought were important. And this is not in any way a prescription or
that's what I was going to say.
Do these 10, you'll be fine.
Well, and I think that's good to preface it with that we're all unique, and while you can, hear someone else's story or hear someone else's, viewpoint on things, it doesn't mean that's what you have to do or that's what your journey should look like.
Right. Because the bulk of my spirituality and practices, the bulk of it is getting up early when I could, sitting on the porch or sitting in my chair and kind of meditating. And then from that comes writing, and I write, and then I interact with people. I have community with that writing and the things that that came up in that. And there's not a whole lot more in my spirituality than that, but there were some things, that kind of happened to get us there, and things that happened along the way. And those are the things I wrote down. So we just wanted to discuss these a little bit.
Yeah. Well, I would say that, our spirituality, what we decide to invest in from a spiritual point of view is very different. Like you do your thing, I do mine, and we just both honor wherever we are.
And there's some things we do together.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So the first thing I wrote down is, this is what I hear from a lot of people as they're journeying, as they're evolving. Number one is to go inside and be at peace and trust yourself. I don't know how many times I hear that in stories, podcast interviews, and so on, is that it's that first step of going inside. A lot of the meditations that are guided that I listen to say, go inside to that place, and be at peace with that and trust yourself, learn to trust yourself. So religion taught us not to trust what we feel inside, and that everything within us was bad and evil. But many of us have discovered that, like Jesus said, the kingdom of God is within us. And when we find this inner knowing, it opens up to wisdom and direction for our near future. So what do you think about that?
Yeah, I would completely agree with that. I think that is... that was one of the hardest things probably for me to start doing, because I was so unsure of myself. I mean, I think I've shared this before. I didn't know what I believed, who I was. I was always the pastor's wife. I was always, told what to do by denominations. So, and growing up, I was a middle child. And well, it's funny because I follow on Instagram this guy who does a lot as far as birth order, and supposedly the middle child is the crazy one. And I feel like I'm more I've always just been tell me what to do, the follower kind of thing. Tell me what to do, just really unsure of myself and whether my decisions were right. So this took me a while, I think, to really come to the realization.
And also, traditional meditation is not as natural for you. You say, I have a hard time, with getting rid of thoughts and so on.
Yeah, that's true.
So you kind of have a different way of approaching this. If I were to say you need to sit down and meditate and do it this way.
Yeah, no, I'm not going to do that. I've tried.
Yeah.
And, for me, those times where I'm I trust myself the most are probably and I describe this in our book, those times where I'm just holding one of, our grandchildren or doing something with them and just being with them. I don't really have I can't really say I meditate, I pray, I do anything that would be quote unquote spiritual or sound spiritual. But I can definitely say that I do trust myself more. And I do have that knowing. A lot of times, even now, sometimes the fear and anxiety can take over and you're just maybe I really don't know. But I think if you can just get quiet, if you can just get quiet. And I think one of the best things that we've heard through Dr. Paul Fitzgerald and other kind of, people that do focusing and stuff like that is just to really get quiet, take some deep breaths, just ask yourself, where's this anxiety coming from? What is it trying? That was one of the best things I think Dr. Paul told me is, just ask that part of you, what are you trying to tell me? What, are you trying to warn me about something? Are you trying to protect me from something?
Right.
not fear. That's not fear-based. It's just like, what do you want me to learn from this? And
so even though I'm, I don't look like the yogi on the video, I'm not doing it like that. But I am going inside because, like you're saying, you're paying attention to your emotions and what you're feeling. When you do that, you are going inside. And maybe it's, for some people, it's when they wash dishes, when they walk outside in the park, or when they sit down and meditate. But it's whatever you do, even holding your grandkids, that pushes you inside and gets you to that place.
I think for me also, like this summer is actually seeking professional counseling, not a Christian counselor, but just actual, a counselor, just and just working through some of that anxiety. So
the second thing I wrote down was embracing uncertainty. And I said, I suggest Keith Giles' book, Sola Mysterium, to understand this point. The first thing we must deconstruct is our certainty. It is counter to what we learned growing up, that we should be certain about everything, especially our beliefs. But the opposite is true. None of us is right, and the things we are trying to discover are too big to be contained. We must approach all of them with a sense of mystery. So it's that, it's kind of that thought of, well, so Laura, you're deconstructing. So now what are your new beliefs? And how certain are you about those? And can you, produce a doctrinal statement? Let's all get a doctrinal statement. Let's rally around that and then proceed. Which, when you do that, you're not really proceeding. You're getting stuck again.
Right. Yeah. No, and I mean, mystery, that again was a really hard thing for me. The uncertainty was hard for me at first because, of course, it's funny because like in the church and when we do marriage counseling and stuff like that, like the denomination that we were in was always like, women they like to feel secure, which is some white man telling me what I like, but whatever. And that's not necessarily wrong, but and there is some safety, I guess, in certainty, I would say. But then that certainty just takes away, like you said, just takes away so much of that mystery and that wonder. And I've talked about that on other podcasts as well as this one, just how, we have this sense of wonder when we're younger, and then somehow it, through, I don't know, indoctrination or just, I don't know what it is, but I mean, I can only speak to religion, really. You are slowly told over and over not to question. It's just how it is. This is just how God works. This is just how it is. Don't question it. But really, there was not for me, there was always this sense of being unsettled because I recognized so many contradictions and things that just didn't line up. And so I feel like there was always like this anxiety that was looming over me. But now that we're outside of it and we don't have the certainty that we did, I don't feel that as much. Like I feel more of a sense of peace. So it's really weird to me.
Yeah, somebody might ask me, okay, so what do you believe? I was listening to somebody talk about the afterlife today. It was Messy Spirituality.
I need to listen to
talking about that and, what happens after death.
Right.
Things like that. So, Karl, what do you believe? Well, I don't know.
Right.
My view of God is leaning in directions, but it hasn't arrived anywhere. But even though you could ask me, what do what specifically do you believe about everything? When I was a Southern Baptist, I could tell you. But now
you can say it. But did you really? Did we believe it because somebody was telling it to us, or do we really, really believe it?
We believed it, and we had certainty about it because we thought that was, what was going to give us peace. But now I say, be present, be authentic. And if my journey is authentic, if I'm listening, if I'm searching, if I'm moving, and I call it evolving, then I can still be at peace, even though a lot of my beliefs are uncertain. A lot of where I'm going is uncertain. But that's the nature of a journey.
Mm-hmm.
If you're going to call it a journey, then it's a journey.
Mm-hmm.
It's an adventure.
Mm-hmm.
It's not where we sit in a room somewhere and just confirm what we already said we believe, even though we sometimes don't really believe it as much as we say we do.
Mm-hmm. I would say, I don't know, as you're talking, one of my core beliefs is love, but then I have to drill down on that,
mm-hmm.
And so what do I believe about the concept of love?
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I like to do, is
mm-hmm.
go really broad,
mm-hmm.
but then really think about, so what is it that you believe about this particular concept,
mm-hmm.
this really broad concept?
And it's okay not to know
right
for sure right
mm-hmm.
now. It's
mm-hmm.
it's okay to be pursuing it.
Right, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I think that's the important part. Like you said, I think that's part of being on a, is, examining those things and really thinking about those things, and not just, getting stuck in one particular place.
Mm-hmm. So number three is we must face our woundedness. I don't remember what I said here, but I want to. Many people who deconstruct are surprised when they encounter darkness in the trauma that religion tried to stuff down for them. It can seem like an obstacle or a detour or even a message to turn around or go back. But when we lean into the pain and discomfort of our trauma, we find the healing we've been searching for all along. It will be like peeling an onion, and it will be hard, but it will also be worth it. So a lot of times in deconstruction conversations, you get into that, it leads, deconstruction leads you to peace, but it also might lead you to the psych ward, mm-hmm. and my response to that is, if that trauma is there, then it's not because you're going through deconstruction, it's because it was already there. It was always something you needed to deal with, and deconstruction brought out that PTSD
mm-hmm.
that you had from religion, and now you got to face it.
Right.
So I think it's important in our spiritual journey. We've got to get there one way or another. We're going to have to do some focusing, some shadow work, some counseling like you were talking about.
Mm-hmm.
But facing your woundedness, I think, is key to spirituality. I don't know how you can have a flourishing spiritual life with unprocessed trauma, or things that keep being triggered and pop up that we don't deal with.
Right.
Yeah,
absolutely. This is one of the things that I always hated, probably up until probably this summer, when I decided I really needed to get into some therapy. But you would always tell me, you need to lean into the pain, and I'm like, I don't want to lean into pain. Who wants to lean into pain?
Yeah.
But I mean, I see now what that meant. You just have to deal with those things that you've either been stuffing down, or religion has told you to stuff down, or religion has bypassed or told you to bypass. So it's definitely something you have to face, those wounded parts of yourself. I would say too, though, that you don't have to do that alone. I mean, you need to find somebody that is definitely somebody you feel safe to share your story with, whether that's a counselor, or definitely somebody that will sit with you as you're dealing and processing these things.
Okay, number 4 is live and love from our authenticity. So part of our spiritual life is just living our life, loving people, going through life authentically, right?
Right.
So that's not a complicated spiritual practice, or something we need a priest to do over. It's what we're doing as we're living our lives. So this action item for most teachers, including Jesus, are very simple. There are things like love your neighbor, treat people like you want to be treated, be present with people. Things like love, compassion, empathy. They're easy to discover as the key components, and they show up in all types of teaching. But the secret sauce to all of it may be the need to do those things as ourselves and in our own way.
Okay, so explain that last part, because I'm not sure I follow.
So that means, what does it look like to love your neighbor? I don't just want to be doing things to impress other people, to make my pastor happy. I need to do the things that I get joy from doing, and doing those with the way I'm built, the way I am, the way I process the world. And so doing it as ourselves, doing it in our own way. If the most, like one of our daughters talked about you as being a deep well. And so, but they were talking about that in the way you relate to the grandkids. So if sitting on the couch snuggling with the grandkid in your way, the way you want to do it, the way you from deep within know how to do it, then that's authenticity, right?
Yeah.
And so we live our lives, and so living your lives, just going through life without being phony, being authentic, but loving people, not in whatever you think the quote-unquote Christian way to do that is, or the way that was organized by your church to do it, but doing it authentically.
Right, and then living and loving for the people, that you choose, that you feel, a deep connection to. And that could be, people that are outside the church. There's so many people that are basically don't, darken the doors of a church because they are not welcome. And, since deconstructing, since being out here in the desert, it's like, that's who I'm choosing to love and give time and attention to. And that's where I feel that really authentic, deep spiritual love is for people that are in the margins, So yeah.
So living and loving, just going through life authentically, I think is a big deal. Number 5 is listen to each other and believe each other's stories. This is something we've learned as we've deconstructed. So for me, religion never provided enough time to process my grief. Maybe what we should have been doing while we were listening to a sermon should have been listening to each other. Our stories are sacred, and we need to tell them and have the other person listen to us and believe us when we say what happened to us. And I know that's a big one for you. Can you explain that?
Well, I mean, just, again, that's why we preface so much of what we do on the Desert Sanctuary, or when we wrote our book, as saying, this is our story. This is for me. This was my experience. I'm not saying it has to be your experience, but it was my experience, and I need people in my life who are going to believe my experience, whether yours looked exactly like mine or whether it doesn't look like mine at all. Just like I can believe somebody when they say, but I'm from a great church, and we love LGBTQ, plus we love that community and they're welcome here. gonna believe you.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna believe you until I hear or see something different.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm gonna believe you initially. Now, is that my experience? Is that the type of church community that I come from? Absolutely not. And I come from a lot of judgment and people, especially women in the church, that were brutal and did a lot of damage. Mm-hmm. That is my story. And I'm very careful. And I mean, I know a podcast can go out to who knows how many people. And I've been on other podcasts where I've shared my story. So I know people can hear it. But I'm just hoping in good faith that they hear it and they are receiving it as sacred, mm-hmm. because, and that's how I want to hear other people's stories too, because I don't take telling my story lightly, mm-hmm. In fact, it took you a lot of discussing, and you didn't force me to write this book or anything like that, mm-hmm. but it did take a while for you to kind of explain to me the benefits of it and how it could maybe help in my healing, mm-hmm. and things like that, because I really didn't want to bring this up ever again. Mm-hmm. I mean, I really wanted it to just all go away, mm-hmm. but it wasn't going away. Mm-hmm. And so I just say all that to say that my story is sacred, your story is sacred, every story we hear on this podcast is sacred. And mm-hmm. and as I listen to another podcast called Mormon Stories, and sometimes I will catch myself going, I wonder if they're being really honest. Mm-hmm. And then I think to myself, you know what? They mm-hmm. need someone who's going to believe them. That's not my story, but mm-hmm. that's their story. Mm-hmm. And I choose to believe them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it sounds, funny to me now to say, well, what are your practices? Well, we listen to each other, and I learned that from the sisters, mm-hmm. Benedictine sisters, but I'm still not great at it. But every time we do a podcast, and one of our co-hosts says, after we get done, he always says, this is like therapy, mm-hmm. Because he's telling his story again. Right. And it's therapeutic for him. Mm-hmm. So the statement that stuck out in here was, maybe instead of listening to a sermon, we should have been listening to each other. Mm-hmm. And I think that would have made all the difference in the world.
Yeah.
Number 6 is experience real community. You want to read that one?
So you said that real community and real family cannot be orchestrated in a central location by clergy or anyone else. What we call community in religion is usually faux or fake community, and more about common enemy intimacy than anything else. Real community happens organically as we live our lives. Our coworkers, neighbors, family, and friends naturally become our community. Anytime we try to orchestrate family or community, it has negative effects. Corporations, businesses, and churches were never supposed to be our community. They are faux communities at best and toxic at their worst.
Yeah, so common enemy intimacy, of course, is hating the same people. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And sometimes, unfortunately, even if it's the devil or homosexuals or mm-hmm. whatever, mm-hmm. Communities. And really my point there was just that corporations and churches should never orchestrate what's community for us. They mm-hmm. should never be the main community, because we go out throughout our lives, we go to work, we have family, we have immediate family that lives with us, we mm-hmm. have neighbors, mm-hmm. That's really our real community, mm-hmm. And all of those things make up that corporate community for us.
Right.
If we go to church, and have a small group or something, that might be part of our community, mm-hmm. but it's not entirety. If it is, it's a faux family, it's mm-hmm. a faux community, it's not real.
Mm-hmm. What would you say to like people who maybe their family has been really, really toxic, and I don't know, church has been a safe place for them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think at times there will be groups of people at the church, and that's what it usually boils down to. It's a small group of people in the church that bond together. And going back to the last point, it's someone in there that listens to you, believes your story about your family, and lets you work through that. Or maybe it's some counseling that we were talking about earlier, And so, we're not required, if my neighbor's toxic for me, I'm not going to have barbecues with him.
Right.
But sometimes that happens in church, that people in church and systems in church and the doctrines of the church are toxic, but we're almost forced into associating with them, and we're told that's our family, that's our community, and you just got to live with it, right?
Well, I mean, even in churches we are told like we're the family of God, right? Yeah, so we're supposed to be, one big happy family. And then I think about like even in my classroom, like we have jobs and we call ourselves kind of a classroom family. And there's a book that I read, and that's exactly what it says at the end, like we're a classroom family. But you definitely, like, I don't know, you have to be really careful saying that, because some people's idea of family is incredibly toxic.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you can definitely bring that, into a church or any kind of setting if you're not careful.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. So number 7 is keep asking questions, keep evolving. Some of the best teachers I know, including Jesus, stress the simple fact that we don't need a bunch of answers. What we really need is better questions. It may be too simple to say that the way to evolve is to keep asking questions as we learn to ask better ones. And so a lot of times when people ask Jesus a question, he asked them a question back. He didn't answer it, even though theoretically he had all the wisdom and knowledge and and was their rabbi sometimes. He still didn't answer the question.
I think though that, and we, like we were saying earlier, churches just don't do well with uncertainty. So we feel like we have to have an answer for people, right? We have to solve whatever problem they're having, even if it's to say, well, just pray about it or trust, which is not helpful.
Right.
It's really not helpful.
Right.
Because some of these people have been praying, like sobbing. I mean, I remember doing that. I remember just crying out and silence.
Yeah.
Silence. And so that just creates more trauma.
Right.
I think we have to, and to me, like Jesus posing a question back, I mean, that's actually really good teaching if you don't answer it, but let the person asking the question, again, it goes back to that inner knowing. What is your gut telling you about that?
Yeah, for sure.
I think Jesus was definitely onto that.
Yeah. So number 8. So I want to have you read this one.
Okay, so be where you are, presence. This simple statement is so important to me, which this is written by Karl, but now that I sign everything I write with the statement and the next. Occasionally, I must visit the past to find healing, and I do plan ahead and think about the future, but most of my life is spent right here, where I am. It behooves me to live where I am. I don't know if I can make it any simpler than that.
Yeah. So I discovered this in the tea shop, being present. When I was trying to be present and I looked at you and JD and you guys were, and the tea shop, the man with no name was present. And then later on when I was working at Lowe's and people would say, what's the plan, like, for your life? And I'd say my plan is to be here today.
Right.
And that's when I kind of started getting it. And then in the Being book, we wrote about it some more and kind of uncovered layers of that and so on. But it's just that idea of presence, being where I'm at. aesthetic. It's that acceptance word that I hate. I shouldn't say I hate it. It's tough for me to accept because it seems like I'm copping out if I say, well, this is how it is.
Yeah.
This is what's happening today. This is where we're at. Today as I was going from the vision optometrist, my eyes were dilated, and I'd got the COVID booster the day before, so I'm kind of sluggish from that. And then going to my doctor's appointment, where I got 2 shots, one in each cheek, and but this is what I'm doing today.
Yeah.
And it helps if, while I'm at the optometrist, if I can be present there, not 100 miles away, thinking about what do I have to do this day. I don't want to buy glasses and blah, 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 But just be where you are. Right. And then number 9, I didn't let you talk there, but
that's okay. No, that's fine. Number 9 is be who you are, which is authenticity. So when you said, as my current friends and I talk about what's important, authenticity shows up in almost every conversation. I spent most of my life trying to be like my heroes, and especially like Jesus. When I learned to be myself, being like Jesus was natural. Many of the virtues, like integrity, are almost impossible unless we are authentic.
Yeah, so we talked about authenticity before quite a bit.
Yeah.
So, number 10 is be at peace. I used to say peace is not the absence of turmoil, it's the presence of God. Martin Luther King Jr. said peace is the presence of justice. Peace happens in our world and in our lives when we live and love authentically from our true self. When what we send out is true and authentic and honest, the residue left behind is genuine peace.
Yeah.
Can you read that? Please no.
Please know that none of the spirituality can be orchestrated or mustered by a group with the right pastor, priest, or teacher. All of it comes from within when we embrace our own evolution and embrace the being and becoming of what we always were. So, and then I like how you end that, because you're like, please join in the conversation, which is really like what our main goal is like, we want to have conversations about these things. So
all of that stuff, even though it's got 10 points, it's fairly simple. Is kind of the way we're endeavoring to live our lives as we're maturing and evolving and understanding more. It kind of just becomes real simple. What are we going to do today for God? Or however we used to say that. Well, today what we're going to do is we're going to be here. We're going to try to be present with each other. We're going to try to be authentic as we live our lives. We're going to take some time to go inside. We're going to do those simple things, live in love, live in authenticity. And those, we don't have to build a $10 million building and have $1 million budget to do, right? It's just simply living our lives in an authentic and real way. And it's more
however
than
long that takes you is however long it takes you. Like, some days I feel more authentic than other days, and that's okay too. It's learning to, like you said, accept where you are today, and just, I used to hate that, stay on the journey kind of talk or whatever, but really I think that every day is a journey. I don't have a destination necessarily. I'm okay with where I am today, and wherever people listening to this, wherever they are, is perfect. Like, you don't have to be anywhere someone else is.
That's right. So we do want you to pick up the book, mainly because it's going to put some meat behind what we've been talking about. as you see we'll tell our story. We'll tell kind of the evaluation we went through to see if we weren't faking ourselves out. And a lot of people have said, yeah, that's a lot like my story. And so we want you to get that perspective and feel like there's someone else on your side. And then let's have some conversations. Let's discuss it. Let's toss it around, and let's evolve. Let's move forward.
Yeah, definitely.
All right.
Well, I hope it's been a good birthday.
Yeah.
You only have about 5 hours left, so
I know, right? So what am I going to do?
Enjoy it. Well, maybe you can go to bed early since you didn't have a very good. It sounds like you had like a big day of doctors and shots and everything else. So maybe a good night's sleep is in order.
Slightly uncomfortable, but it's been good.
Yeah.
And we've still got more to go. We were talking about building a fire here in a minute, maybe. Let's see how much I feel like doing that.
Yeah, I know, right? We'll see.
It's with the time change, it seems like days get really short or something.
Yeah, it's like 7 p.m., but it feels more like 9 or 10.
That's right.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks for joining us today on the Desert Sanctuary. We love you guys. We're glad you're along on the journey with us. We appreciate everyone that listens in and kind of joins in the conversations. And we got some exciting things coming up in the days ahead, so hang with us.
Thank you for joining us today on the Desert Sanctuary. We hope you find who you are as you embark on your own journey.
For all of us here at the Desert Sanctuary, be who you are, be where you are, and be at peace.